Hello everyone, this is Jeff from the Ozark Mountains, that's in Missouri in the USA. Today we're going to take a look at this Okimate 20 color printer that we unboxed in the last Ferengi Fridays episode. This came out a lot of stuff from an auction, and it seems like it's in pretty good shape except for it kind of popped apart in shipping here. So we'll see if we can take care of that. When I was looking at things more closely, I noticed that not only did it come with a black ribbon, but the second ribbon that was out of the cardboard box is actually a color ribbon. This is kind of interesting. Instead of having stripes of color like on an inked ribbon, there is a cyan section, a red section, and a yellow section. So it must print each one at a time. It also came with the manual, which is nice. I've had to read through that. And I dug through all those disc storage boxes that was in a lot of stuff, and I even found the original utility disc. Well, the first thing I did with this guy was image it because I couldn't find it already on the internet, and I'll upload that somewhere to some Commodore disk archive site, so if anybody else needs it, there it'll be. Well, let's get started with this thing. I think the first thing we'll do is pop the ribbon out, check the print head, that type of thing, and then we'll see if we can make it work. Let's jump in. Well, I've not taken the ribbon cartridge in or out of one of these before, so I referred to the manual, and it's got some nice pictures in there that even I can follow. And evidently, you raise this guy up, you make sure that your print head is all the way that way. This print head snaps back like that. And then we should be able to lift this cartridge out somehow. Yeah, there we go. Okay, we're going to take up the slack there. There, we've successfully removed the black print cartridge. Now, this type of printer is a type of thermal printer. You can use the thermal paper like from fax machines, that type of thing, or these ribbons have a wax type coating that the thermal print head can melt onto more or less a regular paper. And they made these print heads easy to remove and clean and replace. And it looks like if we do that, that guy will lift right out of there. And there is our print head. Easy as that. Now we don't want to touch this part, which is the heated part. It says in the manual that you can clean the thermal part here very gently and the contacts and then pop it back in. So let's go ahead and do that. I've got a cotton swab here moistened with some alcohol. I'm going to very gently clean the print head section and the contacts, and we'll go ahead and pop that back in there. I just noticed how dusty and dirty the mechanism here is, so before I put the print head back in, I'm going to go ahead and clean this up using some Q-tips soaked with just a little alcohol. Oh yeah, you can see how much grunge is in there. So I'll get that cleaned up, and then we'll see about popping this case back together. I was really hoping to avoid having to take the cover off of this thing to fix this, but then I noticed this little broken piece which goes in this hole. Evidently that pokes up into the ribbon somewhere. Where would that be? That would be about right there. So some type of brick or something to control the amount of slack in the ribbon. So I think we're going to have to go ahead and pop this cover off of here and like clean this the carriage area here, but I still need to put some grease on the bars. And from looking at this, it looks like there are a screw here and here. And then perhaps this cover will just pop off of here. We'll have to see. Excuse my reach across the camera there. Try to reach down in there with some pliers, and there's a weird spring right down in there. If you can see that spring there. Yeah, right there. I'm not sure what that's about. Okay, and I think we should probably go ahead and pull this Commodore interface out before trying to take it apart. So this interfaces the printer to the Commodore IEC serial bus. And this seems none worse for the wear. And if we can see what's inside that. Yeah. It's got a little Intel 8051 processor. I wonder if that's some RAM. It's an NEC D4168C. That's an Oki M38-128A, and that is socketed. So I wonder if that is like a ROM. And a couple Oki M60307 surface mount chips. So a little computer here in its own right. There we go. We'll set that aside and go about trying to get this cover popped off of here. See if we can find any more screws hiding about. Oops. Does not seem to be any screws under the feet. Although now I'm going to have to glue that foot back on. This looks like the case just pops together. So it might be a case to get some spudger tools out. Okay, I got out my set of spudgers, and it looks like maybe we can just go up under, yeah. There we go. Okay. Maybe there's some similar catches on the back. Looks like there's 3. Okay, these push in like that. And, oh, that's nice. It just lifts straight off. No fuss, no muss. Or no muss, no fuss. Or something. Okay, right here is where that broken off bit goes. You can see where it sits right there. And that is on this lever that activates that switch. So I'm guessing that is what tells it if there's a ribbon installed. Oh, no. You know what that does? That is going through this slot right here. So if the ribbon's out, I bet that slides. I don't know. Maybe it's cassette in, maybe it's ribbon out. If we look at this new ribbon, the ribbon material is on the right-hand side when viewed from the top, and it gets spooled onto the left-hand side. So if we flip this over, as this gets spooled up, it's going to come into view in this window, and that's going to trip that switch and let it know that the ribbon is finished. And if we looked at our used ribbon here, on the front side, we can see that this one's almost all used up. We just barely have any left. We can see that from the back. There's just barely any there. And it's getting close to wanting to press that switch. So we do need to fix our little switch here. I think some epoxy is in order. I finally got this little broken off piece for the ribbon out sensor glued on. The epoxy I had was dried up, and I ordered some from Amazon and they lost it. And I finally found one package of special epoxy for plastic here in town. So I glued that on a couple days ago, and this was broken off at kind of a weird angle like this, which made it difficult to hold in place while the epoxy was setting up. So I had to sit here and hold it like this for about 5 minutes till the epoxy thickened up enough to hold that part in place itself. But anyhow, that should work now. I thought we would first test this guy out with some thermal paper, so I dug some out of my stash and I cut a little piece off here, and I thought we would test the thermal paper first to make sure it actually still worked before we tried in the printer. Let's do that. Well, I've got my little slip of thermal paper here, and I heated up the soldering iron, so I figured we would touch the soldering iron on the paper, and if it turns black, then the paper's probably still good. Oh yeah. So, see if I can show that to you. Yep, okay. So let's see if we can figure out how to thread the paper through this printer. Now, one thing I should note, after looking at the insides of this a little more, it became apparent that this section is the power supply, and this is like a driver section that drives the motors and everything, and this interface card is actually the brains of the whole thing as well. So we're going to have that interface card plugged in there. Okay, that seemed to snap in just fine. Okay, according to the directions, I started in like that. I need to plug this guy in. Oh, hey, look at that. It's moving. Okay, now theoretically, if we hold the select button down and turn it on, it should go into a self-test. So if the print head is good, it should print on this thermal paper. Oh, you got to let off the... Hey, look at that. It is printing. That looks pretty decent for some 30-year-old thermal paper, so what do you say we close this guy back up, and then we'll try printing with one of the ribbons. Okay, I unplugged it again, got the paper out, and I think we'll need to remove the interface card first. Set that aside, and I'll reach across here and grab the top, and I'm going to open this up like this. And I did go ahead, while I was waiting for the epoxy to show up, I did go ahead and clean the cover and greased the slides and things like that. Now I think this should just snap down. This corner is being a little tricky. There we go. Oh, one thing I neglected to point out. Remember I mentioned there was like this spring right here, and I couldn't figure out what it did. Well, on the bottom of this cover, it runs over to this piece of metal right here, and I puzzled over that for quite a while, and then I got to wondering if it wasn't meant to rub up against the bottom of the ribbon right there, and you know, maybe it's to bleed off static from when the ribbon is feeding. I'm not quite sure. Okay, I double checked the procedure for putting the ribbon cartridge in the manual, and I took this, spun this little blue knob around to take the slack out of the ribbon. The print head is all the way that way, and then we want to snap it back toward us. As you lower the cartridge in the compartment, slip the ribbon in front of the print head. So it goes in front of the print head. This is kind of tricky. Okay. So it goes in front of this blue part, which is the print head, and then behind this little vertical part right here, which looks like we got it right. Okay, take up the slack, snap that guy forward. Okay, so we've got our ribbon in, we've got a sheet of paper in here, and we'll try to do a self-test with the ribbon this time. Now, since this has this waxy type ribbon that is actually melded to the paper, The manual goes into detail about the type of paper to use. What you want is something with a slick type of surface, not a real porous paper. This is a paper used for inkjet printing, so I'm hoping it'll do the job. And we'll see what happens. Oh, I didn't put the interface cartridge in, so it's going to do nothing. Let's do that. Now let's try this again. Select button, power. Well, it's making noise. Oh, I see some text. Let's zoom in. Okay, slipped a little bit feeding the paper, but it is printing. It's interesting, it drags that ribbon all the way across the page with the print head. Well, now it looks like we're doing pretty good. Okay, what do you say we get this hooked up to the Commodore 64 and see if we can print from there? Let's take a look at our test setup here. Of course, we've got a Commodore 64C. I've got a fast load cartridge in it using an SD to IEC, and I took that utility disk that came with our printer and I have it on the SD card here. And so I can have the printer plugged in at the same time as the SD to IEC. I have a really cheesy homemade 4-port IEC hub. I stole some connectors out of old floppy drives and plugged them into some perf board and ran a bunch of wires around. It's ugly, but it works. And I thought the first thing we would do is print out a program listing, which is something that was quite common back in the day. Let's do that. Okay, here on the screen we have a program listing for the program I wrote to help test out the 8701 replacement. And I thought we'd go ahead and do a listing of this because that's something we all did back in the day if we were lucky enough to have a printer. And as you recall, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. You have to do an open 3, 4, command 3, and then if we do a list, it should send it to the printer instead of the screen. And it does indeed look like we are printing. You can see our paper is feeding kind of crooked here. It might mean that our feed rollers are not completely clean, that type of thing. And as you can see, it's not the fastest thing in the world. I'm going to turn it all the way dark now and we'll see if how much of a difference that makes. I had it set about halfway. Okay, let's go ahead and squirt our paper out here. Oh yeah, it definitely fed crooked. And the printing is not really that great, but it is legible. And setting this all the way to dark did help. I wasn't real happy with how the paper was feeding through here. And I noticed that the rubber feed rollers here still seem to be a little dirty, although I had cleaned them before. So I'm taking some more mild cleaner. I think I've got some Formula 409 in here and a Q-tip. I'm going to wipe down the roller and rotate it around a little bit and keep doing that till those come clean. Now on paper feed rollers, at this time frame, the rubber they were made out of dries out if you use alcohol or any type of solvent like that. So the best thing to use is just a mild cleanser like this. Yeah, you can see there's still a lot of buildup on those rollers. So I'll get this cleaned off and we'll try again. Okay, I spent another 15 minutes or so cleaning up those 2 rubber feed rollers and went through about 5 or 6 Q-tips, and it's feeding the paper much better now. So I don't know if they ran a lot of thermal paper through here and that wore off on those feed rollers or what the deal was, but now it seems to be better. And I am going to load the demo that came with the Okidata utility disk, as you can see here. And it says in the manual that this will give us a chance to print in color or black and white. So let's say we've got the black and white ribbon in here now, so we'll do the black and white first. We'll do 4, black ribbon or thermal paper, press return. Oh. Italicized. Now, you can see, if you look here, you can see the ribbon isn't working quite right. Okay, it's printing okay, but it wasn't taking up the ribbon properly. So I don't know if the problem was with the ribbon feed or just this particular ribbon. So I'll try another piece of paper, maybe do one of the color demos. How about that? Okay, I think we'll try a color demo now. So we'll put in the color ribbon. And print head is all the way to the left. Flip that guy down. And oh yeah, we had a ribbon catastrophe here. Now we'll try our color ribbon. And we'll remove the little bar here. Take up the slack. Pop it in there. Push our print head forward. Kind of curious how it knows where the ribbon is actually at as far as those colors. So let's do the Middle Earth demo. What do you say? 1, load color ribbon. Okay, let's see what happens. Well, it's got the picture up on the screen. I printed some yellow. You know, I recall seeing this picture before. Huh. A little bit of cyan. So this is the result that we got with the first attempt at color printing, and you can see obviously the ribbon is not lining up for each color pass. So we'll have to take that apart and see what is going on. It looks like I put the cover back on too soon, and so I removed the computer and took the cover back off and tried to get an idea of how this printer ribbon feeding worked. And it's actually kind of complex and kind of neat the way they did it. So when you're getting ready to print a line, the print head's over on this side. This solenoid pulls in, which pushes the print head up. And it also rotates this guy over. Watch him. Which I think acts like a brake to the ribbon. And as the print head moves across like this, since it can't pull the ribbon backwards because of this brake, it has to pull it out of the new side. So the ribbon is going to get stretched out like this, and then as it moves the print head back, it spins this to take up the slack. And that wasn't working, and I played around with this solenoid mechanism and cleaned the brake here. And I put the ribbon back in, kind of holding everything in place. Kind of hold the ribbon like this since we don't have the cover. Watch how as the carriage goes across, this blue part won't spin, but you might be able to just see this spin as it's pulling the ribbon out of this side. And then as the carriage starts to go back, it should start spinning the blue side. We'll see if that happens now after everything's cleaned up. side's not spinning. Oh, it got stuck on the end of the paper. But that looked like it did kind of work, although this is not the best way to print. So I'll fix this mess and we'll set the cover back on it and we'll see how that works. One other thing I want to point out while I've got the cover off is this little photo sensor right here. Now the ribbon goes through here, so it knows that there is a black ribbon inserted because it'll block the sensor. And for the color ribbon, not only do you have the 3 colors, but there is a black section and then a clear section. So it will advance the ribbon till it sees the black section, and it'll advance it a little more till it sees the clear section, and then it knows it should be at the right starting section for the yellow part of the ribbon. Okay, so I've just got the cover set back on there. I didn't put the 2 screws in, and of course our ribbon cartridge is in. So we'll turn it back on in test print mode and see what happens. So what we should see as the carriage moves that way is this blue roller shouldn't spin. As the carriage moves back this way, this should spin. See if I can keep the paper pulled back like this. I've leaving the covers open here so we can see what's happening. Okay, that looks a lot better. Let's get the computer back out and see how that part works now. Okay, I put the color ribbon in a new sheet of paper, and I am going to select another color picture to print. We'll try number 2 this time, the Celtic Eagle, and we'll see if it works any better. Okay. Looks like it found the start of the yellow on the ribbon. It takes a long time to process each strip of color. Okay, at least it's printing some cyan now. This is a 600 dot per inch scan of the final result. And yes, this thing is incredibly slow, about 22 minutes to print this out. But this was pretty good quality for the day. Something else I appreciated about this printer is what a good job they did on the owner's manual. Not only is it a nice size, but they did a good job with the illustrations. They very clearly explain how to load paper, how to load a ribbon, and a section for how to set up all the control codes for your various word processing programs at the time. There's even a programmer's reference guide. And in this programmer's reference guide, it even describes such things as how printing in color works. It's kind of interesting. You open a channel to the printer, and you print out these 2 control codes to put it in color mode. And this also tells it to find the start of the 3 color stripes. So the first one is going to print in yellow. And since we don't have a semicolon here, it'll do a carriage return, but not a line feed, which will take it to the magenta, and then we're going to print in the magenta. And we'll do the same thing here, and then it'll print in cyan. Now notice all these red numbers here, that's the number of spaces that are in here, and that just makes sure that, you know, all the text that's in black you're printing each time. Then we close it out and close down the channel to the printer. Now I've typed this in, so let's go ahead and give this a shot and see how it works. Go ahead and run our program and we'll see what happens. Hopefully this will work. So now it's cycling through the ribbon and it's going to find the start of the 3 colors. We just went through cyan there and the black stripe and the clear stripe. We're printing in yellow. Then we're going to print in magenta. And then in cyan. Oh, I made a syntax error in line 60. Look at that. So let's try to fix that real fast. Let's try this again with the fixed file and see if it works. This time, since I know it was starting at the beginning of the color bars on the ribbon, it didn't have to cycle all the way through. There we go. Now our file runner, we didn't create an error. So, and that's not too bad. I mean, for this age and old ribbon, etc. This is certainly a much better color than you could get out of anything even near this price back in the day. We've got a couple small jobs left to do. One is to put this cover on. And another is to replace this foot that I peeled off there looking for screws. I'll try to get that tape that's on there off of there. Maybe a little screwdriver here to scrape under it. Just very, very carefully. We don't want to dig into the plastic. There we go. And then a little goo right around the edge that cleaned up really nice. What I like to use for sticking those little feet back on is this 3M double-sided tape. Let's take a piece off, stick it to the foot, trim around it. Try not to touch the sticky part any more than I have to. And poke it right down there in place. I've already cleaned up the back side of that rubber so it'll stick. Now I've already cleaned this case. What I need to do now though is take some soap and water and clean up the cables. I haven't done that yet. I don't like grungy cables. And I need to put the screws back in it. And I'll probably go ahead and put some 303 aerospace protectant on this to help protect the plastic. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the look at our little Okimate 20 printer here. It was certainly a different type of printer. Compared to others in this time period, it's small, it's relatively simple, it's quiet when it prints, although it is very, very slow. And for having a color output, this was a really good quality output for the time. You know, an impact type dot matrix printer that used a ribbon, that wouldn't have looked nearly as nice as this, but it would have been faster. So other than the slowness and the expense of buying all those ribbon cartridges, this would have been a neat little printer back in the day. Probably not for every task, but if you wanted to print some color pictures or some color screen grabs, stuff like that, that would have been neat. I'd like to take a moment to say thanks to the folks who support the Hey Birt channel on Patreon and through other means. It's really appreciated. If you'd like to find out some more about that, we'll just look down in the description down below and there'll be some links. Also like to say thanks to all the subscribers. If you want to subscribe, just look down below. You'll see a little rectangular box that says subscribe. Well, click on that guy and then click on the bell icon so YouTube will be nice enough to let you know just as soon as I post a new video. If you have any questions or comments, just leave them in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear from you. Well, until next time. Bye.